Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're talking about System Shock, which is like in the immersive sim genre, I think. Is that accurate to say?
That is the accurate description of the genre. You just nailed it.
Sort of like a predecessor to the BioShock series, which I guess makes sense because they're shock games. But also games like Prey, and I'm sure there are many other examples of the immersive sim genre that I am excited to hear about, because I have no experience with System Shock. I've played all 3 BioShock games. I tried to get into Prey, which I think kind of falls into that same genre. Couldn't really get into Prey, but I love BioShock, and now I want to hear about the roots.
System Shock.
Very exciting.
The before times. Yeah,
the before times.
So it is the precursor to BioShock. And you are correct. You mentioned Prey. The other games that kind of qualify as immersive sim genre games are Deus Ex and Dishonored. I have never played either of those games, which is ridiculous because I feel like I would enjoy them. So
yeah, I haven't played either of them either.
That's what this whole episode is going to be, by the way. Me being like, I haven't played these games, but I feel like I would like these. So that's what we're going to talk about. So the immersive sim genre really started in 1992 with the game Ultima Underworld. And you could really say that a lot of first-person shooters with any sort of immersive atmosphere owe a lot to Ultima Underworld and System Shock and System Shock 2. So there's a video that Discord member Peter mentioned, and he dropped in the sources tab, I believe. It is called Errant. It's by Errant Signal. It's a channel that does a lot of like video game.
Oh, that's a great channel.
Yeah, it's like, I wouldn't say it's history, but it's also like thematic and kind of almost talking about like rhetoric of video games a little bit. And the video is titled 0451 in reference to a number that appears in multiple immersive sim games, which is an homage to Looking Glass Studios, who created System Shock 2, and also Ultima Underworld. They helped with that. Usually because, so I guess to describe an immersive sim game, there are some pieces to it. It usually takes place in a fantastic setting, i.e. underwater city, or city in the sky, or
city
space
on the
station.
Moon. Yeah, Space Station. That's what Prey is, right? Space Station.
Yeah, Space Station is what System Shock 1 is, and System Shock 2 is a faster-than-light experimental spaceship. So, yeah. And always, not always, but consistently, that setting is under collapse. So in BioShock, you get there when everyone's spliced up and the city's on its way out. Usually it's because of a failed ideology. In the first BioShock game, it's all objectivism, for example, like Ayn Rand, that kind of stuff. And it is usually driven by one person, so who sees all. That's also very important, who sees all. And that person is Andrew Ryan in the first BioShock game. I'm using BioShock because I feel like that's the game that most people are familiar with as like a basis of like, these are the 3 things that make it an immersive sim game.
Yeah, I think that's a good lens to use.
Yeah, so I think this not only adds like a pulpy tone, but it also tells the player that the important part is you can solve these problems in a variety of different ways. And really, you can get creative. And that's what's cool about an immersive sim game. It throws you in this immersive world, and you can solve problems how you want to. Also, it's important to note that they have a society under collapse. And this is something that's in that Errant Signal video that I really like because, and I never thought about this, that makes it so you don't have to worry about like traditional norms, social norms, or consequences. You know, like you're not going to go to jail. Like in Skyrim,
right?
If you
can
commit
just
a crime,
start breaking into places and like going through people's desk drawers and finding their notes and stuff, and it's not like weird.
Yeah, exactly. You can just go look through everything, and it's totally fine. So that's a big part of immersive sims as well. One of the coolest points in that video that Peter put on the Discord by Errant Signal is they mentioned that if you use these circumstances, you could make an argument that Breath of the Wild is an immersive sim.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, the game takes place in a post-Ganon victory Hyrule. So Ganon would be the fantastic settings Hyrule that's under collapse because it's currently falling apart. Ganon is taking over it. He's like the all-seeing eye. Obviously, it's not like fully over your shoulder immersive sim because Ganon's not whispering in your ear about how great Ayn Rand is or whatever, but it still works. Also, I should mention, like, I'm using Ayn Rand objectivism as an example. In BioShock 2, it's really about religion. In BioShock 3, there's like a bunch of different things like patriotism, nationalism coming into play. So each game has their own thing. System Shock, in particular, was kind of the pioneer of the term emergent gameplay. And emergent gameplay, according to Wikipedia, is what gives the player character a range of abilities and tools and a consistent game world established by rules, but does not enforce any specific solution onto the player. So an example of this would be, do you just go attack the guard, or do you hack the security camera to identify as an enemy and then the drones attack the guard? Or do you sneak around the guard? Or there's just a lot of different things you can do.
Or in like Breath of the Wild, do you get on top of a boulder and like abuse the tools that you're given to like launch yourself and this boulder straight into Ganon's castle from the bottom floor? You can totally do that, and I don't think that was intended by Nintendo, but you can do it, and like that's part of the gameplay. Is like stuff that's maybe not even intended by the developers can happen, right?
Oh man, I've watched so many videos of people doing that like bomb launch thing in Breath of the Wild, and I tried to do it, and my guy would just die instantly. It's so really hard. About timing. It's really hard to do, but there's some people that are so good at it.
Yeah,
that's a really cool thing. If you go on YouTube and just look at like, I think I just say bomb launch is probably what you could type in the bar for Breath of the Wild. And it's people abusing that you don't get hurt as bad from your own bombs if you're in a certain position. And you can essentially fly across the map and travel great distances at a time. So, also, one thing to know about immersive gameplay, it may be possible to complete in-game problems using solutions that designers like didn't foresee, just like what Tyler just said, essentially shooting yourself up into Hyrule Castle with a boulder is not what was intended, but you did it now. In Deus Ex, the example I use is that designers were surprised that players would use wall-mounted mines as pitons to like climb walls. That's something they did not think of. The designers had no idea, and then that's what people just did naturally, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
Let's do some grime facts about System Shock now that we've kind of talked about immersive sim genres and emergent gameplay. So the developer is Looking Glass Technologies. It's important to note it's technologies at the time because they are going to have a name change at some point. September 23rd, 1994 is when the game released. It came out on MS-DOS, Mac OS, PC 98, and Microsoft Windows. And currently, you can play the game on Steam, Good Old Games, all that jazz. It's online for you. It's available now. It was not for a little while, which we'll kind of get to at the end of this episode. It sold 170,000 copies, which is not a lot. Looking Glass Technologies actually lost money on System Shock 1. The genre is immersive action-adventure first-person shooter. The awards it has won is PC Gamer's Best Adventure Game, Computer Games Strategy Plus's Best Single-Player Character Role-Playing Game, and Computer Gaming World had it as one of the finalists for Action Game of the Year. If you want to play System Shock, it'll take you about 13 to 21 and a half hours to beat if you're going quick or if you're kind of completionist it. The Metacritic score it does not exist for this game because it is an older PC game, but PC Gamer at the time gave it a 96%, which is pretty darn high.
So pretty well received, even if it didn't sell well.
Exactly. And I also want to talk about the gameplay a little bit here. I usually go like development and then gameplay and plot, and I'm actually kind of switching it up because I think it's better for you to understand the context of what I'm talking about before I get into development. So this is a new change. If you like it, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. If it doesn't matter to you, then cool, I'm going to keep doing it. So, System Shock is a first-person shooter with RPG elements mixed into it. The game is pretty unique in that you do not interact. You can interact with the physical world, but you also at times go into cyberspace, which is like this 3D wireframe thing we're going to talk about in a bit.
Like Quest World and Johnny Quest?
Yeah, like you go into...
Sweet.
The files are in the computer. No.
The files are inside the computer?
So the game is actually set in a large multi-level space station where you need to explore, fight enemies, solve puzzles. It is non-linear, and it is designed to allow you, like, for that emergent gameplay. Like, you can kind of do it. You're free to explore this area. The HUD, the heads-up display, for all you non-acronym fans out there, actually has something called, like, 3 multifunctional displays. And these things kind of configure whatever information you want. Like, it can be your weapon readouts, it can be an auto map, it can be an inventory. But what I've noticed about the first System Shock is when they say emergent gameplay, they also mean that in the menus as well. Like, you can kind of decide how you want to play this game with what you want to do. You know, like, it's like giving yourself a challenge. Like, you can give yourself a Nuzlocke Run-esque challenge in this game very easily by saying, I only want to hack things, or I only want to beat things with a wrench. You know, it's like,
oh, cool.
Yeah, it's very free, System Shock 1. And I know I watched a video. I don't have the sources for it because I'm a bad video game historian. I can try to find it. I'll try to find it and post it in the Discord. But it was a person actually arguing for System Shock 1 versus System Shock 2. And people tended to enjoy System Shock 2 more because it felt just kind of more like quality of life. Things were a little better. Like System Shock 1, if you look at a screenshot of this menu, you are going to have like a small brain aneurysm because there's a lot going on. It's very confusing. And that, though, is what makes the game so freeing for a lot of people and a lot of fans of the original System Shock over the second System Shock, is that you really have choice to do anything you want in this game, which is really neat, I think. So, like I said, you can go into cyberspace if you want to. When you're in cyberspace, you are moving in a wireframe 3D environment. You are weightless, and you are fighting Shodan, who is the bad guy's security programs. Actions in cyberspace actually will do things in the physical world. Like, you can open a door by going through cyberspace. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff. I don't want to, like, it's so much to do. You have 16 weapons you can choose from in the game System Shock, but you can only carry 7 of them at one time. You fight robots, you fight cyborgs, you fight mutants, and they're all controlled by the big bad Shodan. Have you heard of Shodan, Tyler?
I've never heard of Shodan.
Oh man, Shodan's pretty cool. We'll talk about Shodan in a bit. There actually are different weapon ammunition types with different effects. There's like a dart pistol that you can fire like explosive darts, or it can fire tranquilizers. So this is already something that you're like, in my head, I was like instantly thinking of BioShock. Like, it's kind of crazy that they were doing this stuff so like way earlier than BioShock. You know, like, this is 1994 and they had weapons with different ammo types. Energy weapons, and all their like several types of explosives can be found as well. Like, you can do like concussion grenades. it's a grenade that you throw and it's just gushers just shoot out everywhere. It's terrible.
That sounds like a great grenade, and I think it should be in every game.
You can also get landmines as well. Along with weapons, there are dermal patches and first aid kits. Dermal patches give you like beneficial effects like your health regeneration, or you increase your melee attack power, but they can also cause like side effects like fatigue, or like distort your color perception in how, well, like as you're watching the game, it'll like change the colors in the game.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, attachable hardware can also be found. This is like energy shields, headlamps, and also you can get advanced version of this hardware. You can upgrade it. Like, the game is very, very detailed and has a lot of different customization options for you. One thing I want to point out is you have a main energy reserve, and that gets drained when you use hardware. So there is a way to like kind of control you.
Okay,
like,
so you can't
make
just like equip everything all the time. You sort of have to make choices around how much stuff you have. Energy.
What's also cool too is they have like vulnerabilities for enemy types too. So like, if you fire an electronic weapon against a robot, you're going to do more damage. Which, again, in 1994, they're already doing like Pokemon stuff. You know what I mean? Like in a first-person shooter. I mean, I know Pokemon was kind of going on close to then, but you know, no, it's not. Pokemon is a little later.
Pokemon's 96 in Japan.
96, 97. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the plot. Set in the year 2072, you are a nameless hacker. You, Tyler. But you have no name. You're you, but you have no name. Okay. And you get caught trying to access files about Citadel Station, which is a space station owned by the Trioptimum Corporation. Because
that sounds like an evil corporation.
You know what? That's pretty. You pretty much just nailed it, Tyler. Good job. Because it turns out in this fantasy sci-fi world, corporations not good. So you get caught trying to do that, trying to hack into the station, and then you are actually arrested by the Trioptimum police, because it's a corporate state in a way, and taken to Citadel Station. And Edward Diego, who's an executive, tells you that they want you to hack Shodan, their artificial intelligence that runs Citadel Station, and like take away its ethics because they want to make it so they can do shady business stuff. They're trying to do bioweapon things and sell them to the black market. But then you hack Shodan, and then in exchange, Edward Diego gives you this crazy military grade neural implant. And once you get the implant, you have to have a 6-month healing coma you're put in. And the game starts when you come out of that healing coma. And spoilers, everyone on the station is murdered. Or turned into cyborgs or mutated. And Shodan is now evil. So the plot is actually fed to you in the form of discs and emails. There are no NPCs in like System Shock 1. Like you will never walk up to a person and talk to them.
Okay, it's all monsters.
It's all monsters. It's all like, I think Edward Diego, you talk to over like an audio log kind of voice comm thing, you know?
Like the dude in BioShock. Like
yeah,
that's how,
it's like audio logs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this in a second, actually, when we talk about development, but there are no audio logs in the first iteration of System Shock 1 because this game was released right on the border of floppy disks and CD-ROM. Ooh. And there is one version that is way better than the other, and we'll talk about it in a second. So development-wise, Looking Glass Studios, so System Shock was developed like right near the final stages of their 1993 game Ultima Underworld 2 Labyrinth of Worlds. And the team wanted to do something that was not fantasy. That was a big part of it. They had been doing a lot of Ultima games. They got kind of tired of it. They wanted to move that system of gaming, though, that immersive sim we were talking about, and take it into a non-fantasy setting. So they had, this was really the baby of Doug Church, who was a programmer at Looking Glass Studios. Even though the game was designed by both Doug Church, Warren Spector, Austin Grossman, and Paul Neurath, who is the company head of Looking Glass Studios, the main inspiration, most of it was from Doug Church's brain. They wanted to be like in the realm of immersive sims, but on like different terms. They wanted to really make it so you truly had like total freedom. Originally, they thought about doing it in the modern day, and I thought this was kind of funny. But then Church was like, we didn't want the player to be like, you got to get on the bus and then answer the phone, like just to do like, you know, it's like when I question why people play Second Life. I'm like, why do you want to just do things you could do in real life in a video game? It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So System Shock was originally called Alien Commander and was actually going to be a spin-off of Wing Commander. Isn't that cool?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then they realized they actually wanted to make something that they had like full control of. Because if they made a Wing Commander game spin-off, they'd have to answer to the people who made Wing Commander, and they're like, we don't want to do that. So
yeah, and they have to do it kind of in that world and all the rules established there and stuff.
Exactly. So there were a lot of design documents made during this time. They actually did it in a style of like gameplay minutes where they'd like just break down a scene of how they want a scene to play out in the game. And then they made a giant like design document after that. So, like, for example, like one of those breakdowns of those gameplay scenes would be what happens when a character is like caught by a camera. What can they do? You know, just breaking down a very simple, small scene. The game is heavily based on the tomb dimension of Ultima Underworld 2. So I found that in the notes. I couldn't really find any info on the tomb dimension. I have never played an Ultima game in my life. Tyler, have you played an Ultima game?
Not really. I know some people who've played like Ultima Online, but I don't think that's the same thing as Ultima Underworld. Yeah,
these are like the early Ultima games. So if you played Ultima Underworld 2 and you're very upset that I don't have more detail on that, I apologize in advance. One thing the gang knew they wanted to do with System Shock is get rid of dialogue trees. They felt like dialogue trees completely broke the immersiveness of the immersion sim genre. So that's why there are no NPCs in System Shock. It was a big design decision. Like no more dialogue trees, no more talking to NPCs and like getting story that way. We're just going to get you into it and put you in the story. You only get the story through emails and discs, as I said before. And production began on System Shock in February of 1993. And it's important to note that once production started, Austin Grossman, who had been helping kind of plan the project, backed away, and he really only worked on writing and voice acting after that point. So, let's talk about some of the fun tech things they had to do to make System Shock a reality. So, they actually completely designed a brand new engine using RoccoW C and C++. It was 32-bit code. The engine was capable of processing texture maps, sloped architecture, and light-emitting objects, and it allowed people to look in any direction. You could as a player, you could jump, crawl, climb on walls, lean. It was pretty advanced for the day, and that also showed in how hard it was to optimize on PCs at the time. They made an engine that was so good it broke people's computers.
We've been there. It was the crisis of its day.
Yeah, it was like Crisis, but in 1994. Seamus Blackley designed the game's physics system. And this is actually really cool. So they had another game coming out called Flight Unlimited that was not released. The game Flight Unlimited wouldn't be released until 1995. But they actually took that physics engine and just put it into System Shock, which is cool because System Shock's physics engine is very advanced for that type of game. When you throw an object or shoot a bullet, it changes its trajectory based on its mass and acceleration. It works as physics works in the real world. And also when a character walks, he lunges forward just a little bit, when he takes the first step. There's little things like this that make the game more immersive. Blackley is quoted as saying, quote, "If games don't obey physics, we somehow feel that something isn't right. And the biggest compliment to me is when a gamer doesn't notice the physics, but only notices that things feel the way they should."
Oh,
I thought that was cool. Pretty cool.
Seamus Blackley also designed, if this is the same one, he's the guy who designed the original Xbox.
Whoa.
In 2001. Yeah.
There you go.
Way back in the day. So he's already making a name for himself several years before the Xbox.
Yeah, that's great. So another cool thing about this game is the sound and music, mostly because it was done by the bassist of the alt-rock band Tribe, Greg LoPiccolo, and he was hired to do the music and the sound for this game when he just went to visit his friend named Rex that worked at Looking Glass. He just went in, met his friend, hung out, and they were like, "Do you want to work on this game?" He's like, "Sure." And that's how it happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the music was made on a Macintosh computer, a synthesizer, and they used a program called Audio Vision. And the cool part about the music in System Shock is it dynamically changes based on the player's actions, which is cool because that means there have to be 3 different versions of each track, based on what the character's doing. So, if you're in a fight, the music can change. If you win a fight, the music can change. There's things like that. Mm-hmm. Also, LoPiccolo did the sound, and he would do things like take a portable recorder to an auto mechanic and just be like, "Can you just hit stuff with a wrench?" And then they would just get the material that way. And he developed the game's audio over 16 months, and it was contractually worked on it on a contractual basis. And then Tribe disbanded in May of 1994. The only other person to work. Oh, actually, this is a good fact too. When Tribe disbanded in 1994. Ned Lerner, who worked at Looking Glass, just immediately gave him a full-time job the next day as an audio director. So it was kind of cool that he was working for this game as kind of a fun thing to do. His band broke up, and then they're like, "Well, do you want a job?" And he's like, "Sure, that works great."
I need a job now that my band broke up.
Yeah, who doesn't? So Tim Rise is the only other person to compose music on System Shock, and he made the elevator music when you go into an elevator, which I thought was kind of funny. All right. So let's talk about the AI elephant in the room, Shodan. So Shodan, as Church described it, they stumbled upon a nice villain. Because Shodan is really cool in System Shock, not only because it's an all-knowing, all-seeing AI that you're going up against, but because it's all-knowing and all-seeing, it can directly influence you as a player in non-final ways, in quotes. That's what Church said. And when they say non-final ways, they mean hey, it's the boss battle. We're fighting you to death. That's usually how you fight a villain. But in System Shock, Shodan can do things to you like lock a door, or make you go in one direction, or attack you with robots, mutants, whatever. It's you have this all-seeing force controlling everything you do, and that just adds even more tension to the story. And also...
Sounds fun. Sounds spooky.
It is spooky. This also really connects you to the environment, which is something that's cool. You're fighting Shodan, and you're also kind of fighting the space station itself, which is pretty neat. When it came to Shodan's concept design, Rob Waters who's a concept artist, created Shodan, and Lo Piccolo grabbed his bandmate Terry Brosius to voice the character. And Brosius said that her goal in the recording sections was to speak without emotion, but with some up and down inflections. And then Lo Piccolo took that voice, edited it into robot mode, and then they would add like breaks in it. Because the whole point of Shodan is it's like a corrupted AI. Mm-hmm. So they would add like glitches into the voice to make it so it sounded like it. And the glitching gets worse as you go throughout the game because she's getting more and more out of her mind as an AI goes. But yeah, Shodan's pretty cool. They also said they mentioned this. They based it on Max Headroom, which I had to look up what Max Headroom was. Max Headroom was this weird experimental British TV show about a fictional artificial intelligence. It was just a person in like a mask, like kind of like a late show host, but they were an AI. It was very weird. And I wanted to know if anyone has watched Max Headroom and could elaborate on it in an email. I don't know anything about it other than that.
It used to be, they used to play it on Tech TV, maybe after they changed to G4s when they started playing it. So I've seen a few episodes. I remember it being really strange and I didn't particularly enjoy it. So I can't really talk more about it other than I just remember it being really weird. And like, I think one of the things that has come out of that, like in terms of like pop culture, is the way he talks, because it has like all these glitches and weird like repetitions that happen in it that you see when you're watching things nowadays where they like, this person is a computer thing, and so it'll do a Max Headroom thing where you're like, oh, I get it, like that sort of signals to people that it's a computer. But I don't think the show was particularly good on its own.
Yeah, it just influenced that area of like popular culture. Cool. Well, they based some Shodan on Max Headroom, so there you go.
Nice.
That was a good explanation, Tyler. Thank you. So, the character of the hacker arose as a reaction against the protagonist in Ultima series, the Avatar, because according to Grossman, they wanted to cast the player as someone interestingly morally compromised who had a stake in this. Because I guess kind of as the Avatar, you're like you're just the hero. You know what I mean? And they wanted to kind of make it so, no, you're a hacker. You did a crime, and now you're here. Now, like, what are you going to do? You made this thing evil, so how are you going to fix it? While cyberspace was originally conceived as like a hacking simulation, which you would use to like re-implement Shodan's ethical constraints, it was later simplified when Origin Systems, who was the like overhead of Looking Glass Studios, deemed it too complicated. So they kind of, they simplified it into that wireframe levels you see now, which is still cool. People really like the cyberspace part. The game's Starfield system was programmed by James Fleming and Mark LeBlanc, who was the person that created the HUD. And he later believed that it was too complicated. As I said like 20 minutes ago, it looks so confusing. Mark LeBlanc's quote is, very much the Microsoft Word school of user interface, in that there was no, quote, feature that you could not see on the screen and touch and play with. It was very busy. It's a very, very busy HUD. So I mentioned before that System Shock only sold 170,000 units and how that's not great. And I also mentioned that there were two different versions of System Shock. There's the floppy disk version that came out in September 1994 and the CD-ROM version that came out in December 1994. Well, the CD-ROM version was better in that it had full speech for all the audio logs and emails. It had display resolutions you could change, and just better graphics in general. It is the better version of the game. The problem was Origin insisted on getting the game out there as fast as possible. And Doug Church has later said, quote, we tried to keep them from shipping the floppy version, but instead just shipped the CD version, but Origin would have none of it. And Warren Spector even has said, like, there's regret there with like the floppy version coming out, saying, quote, I wish I could go back and make the decision to not ship the floppy version months before the full speech CD version. The additional audio added so much, it might as well have been a different game. The CD version seemed so much more, well, modern, and the perception of shock was cemented in the press and in people's minds by the floppy disk version, the silent movie version. I really think that cost us sales.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, so that's System Shock 1. It's much like, I think to like a lot, like I said before, kind of about the video that I need to go find the source for, to a lot of people, this is like the very intense, complex, extreme version of System Shock. And in System Shock 2, things become a little more modernized, a little more streamlined, and that's why I think System Shock 2 is genuinely more popular. And we're going to talk about System Shock 2 right now. So,
Woohoo!
System Shock 2 was developed not only by Looking Glass Studios, but also Irrational Games. That should sound
they're
familiar.
going to come back around.
Yeah. So, the game System Shock 2 came out on August 11th, 1999. It came out on Microsoft Windows, OS X, Linux, and now you can play the game on Steam or Good Old Games. I just think Steam's easy, you know?
Yep.
Might as well just play it on Steam. Number of copies sold as of April 2000 were 58,671.
Oh, even worse than the first one?
Yeah, but now, this game is now a cult classic, so we know it's made more money. But that was like CD-ROM sales, so those are the sales that Looking Glass was getting, and that is why Looking Glass folded after this game came out. Once again, it is a immersive action adventure first-person shooter, and I'm going to call it with a splash of survival horror. Just a splash.
So we're getting closer to BioShock territory now.
We really are. Awards-wise, it was PC Gamer US's 1999 Best Role-Playing Game of the Year and Special Achievement in Sound Awards, and it was the runner-up in the Overall Game of the Year. Computer Gaming World nominated it for their Role-Playing Game of the Year prize, but it lost to Planescape Torment. Oh. Sorry, but congrats, Planescape Torment. Average time to complete, this is 13 to 22 hours, pretty much the same. It's got a Metacritic score this time, and it's a 92 out of 100. So, System Shock 2 is different gameplay-wise because at the very beginning, you get to choose a military backstory.
Okay, so you're not playing as the same character then?
You are not playing as the same character. You are a different character this time. You are playing as either a Marine, where you get bonuses to weaponry, a Navy officer that is skilled in repairing and hacking, or an OSA agent that gets start using psionic powers.
Ooh.
Who doesn't love psionic powers? I know you do, Tyler. You talk about them all the time.
I do, yeah. I wish I had psionic powers often, and I talk about it at length with you.
You do. It's like really, It's a really driving force in our relationship as friends. It's kind of weird. Okay, so you do have a system in this where you can unlock certain abilities. They kind of change it up. Like I said before, they're like streamlining upgrades. And in this game, you can upgrade hacking and combat using cyber modules. And those are usually given to you as rewards for completing an objective. And you upgrade at cyber upgrade units. So you use a cyber module to upgrade at a cyber upgrade unit. And then operating system units allow one-time permanent upgrades. Like think about your health going up. Things like that, you know? So nanites can also be spent on items at vending machines. That's like kind of the currency is nanites, including ammunition, health packs. There is a quantum bio reconstruction machine that will reconstitute you for 10 nanites if you die inside where the area resides. Otherwise, you got to load from a save point. And I want you to keep in mind as I'm saying these things, how familiar they are with BioShock, because it's kind of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You can hack devices like keypads and open vending machines and hack everything to reduce prices. And in hacking, the minigame is a feature of a grid of green nodes that you must connect in a straight row of 3. Starting to sound familiar to anybody?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can use ice picks to auto hack the machine, regardless of the difficulty. And there's a drag and drop inventory system, much like the first game. Yeah, there's so many things with BioShock here. If you haven't noticed, it's very, very, very similar. And it's kind of, I would say System Shock 2 is definitely more of what BioShock took its influence from. But we could not talk about System Shock 1. The plot of System Shock 2 is given to you like in audio logs this time instead of discs and emails. It's all audio. There are still no NPCs you see throughout the whole game. Like you're getting it all in audio logs. There is a lot of backstory leading up to the beginning of the game between the events of System Shock 1 and System Shock 2. They are 42 years apart. I will try to sum it up as best as I can right now. The corporation gets crazy and falls after the events of Citadel Station in System Shock 1. It gets bought. It comes back. They make an experimental faster than light ship called the Von Braun that you are on. You wake up in a cryo freeze later on the Von Braun to find the entire crew dead, and you have to solve the mystery of what happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So
sounds scary.
This one is way spookier than System Shock 1, I would say. This is definitely, they thought more about survival horror in this. We're actually going to talk about it really, really soon here. So, development of System Shock 2 began in 1997, and Looking Glass Studios approached Irrational Games with the idea to co-develop a game, and the development teams were fans of System Shock, and so they were like, hey, let's just do a System Shock game. So, early ideas for the story were very similar to Heart of Darkness, which I thought was pretty cool, like the novel. So, yeah, we could have had an Apocalypse Now-esque game. In an early draft, the player was actually tasked with assassinating an insane commander on a starship. So it is very much like a Heart of Darkness kind of thing. The original idea for the game and that title was called Junction Point. So the original idea was you'd assassinate a commander on a starship. It was called Junction Point. The philosophy of the design was to continue to develop the concept of a dungeon crawler, much like Ultimate Underworld, the Stygian Abyss, but do it in a sci-fi setting. So anytime Looking Glass was like, hey, we want to do our games that were really successful, that were fantasy, but we want to make them sci-fi, that became a System Shock game.
Okay.
Is how it pretty much broke down. The press actually mistook the System Shock to be closer to a Doom clone.
Which would make sense in 94. You're talking about the first one?
Yeah. So that's why with Junction Point, their big goal was to make it so there's like way more role-playing elements, which is true. Like in this game, you can do a lot more upgrades to your character and kind of pick out like what you want to upgrade and stuff like that. And also picking one of those 3 military branches in the beginning. That's like your class, and then you edit your class with all those upgrades. It took about 18 months to make System Shock 2. And it cost $1.7 million was the budget. And it was pitched to several publishers and didn't really go anywhere until Electronic Arts, who owned the rights to the Shock franchise, responded by suggesting the game just become a sequel of System Shock. And that's when the change took place, and it became System Shock 2.
So EA made a suggestion that was a good one.
It was a good one.
Wow. Usually publishers are making bad decisions over here, but not on this one, EA. Good job.
I mean, in the end, it did not become a good one financially, but it was still a good one. Yeah, this game, though, I think the lesson of both of these two games is that clearly how much a game sells does not represent how great the game is. Because these are two very good games. They just, at the time, they were so ahead of their time, is really what I would say about these two. The development team did agree to this, and then Electronic Arts became the publisher, and any of the story changes they made to had to incorporate the System Shock franchise in it. So they changed, obviously, the whole, you're in the universe now of this corporation, and then they made it so the bad guy is related somehow to the story of System Shock, which we'll get into. I guess I could say I'm trying to avoid spoiler territory in this, but I guess I'll say this right now. This game was from 1997 or 99, sorry. So I think I can just say it. Spoilers starting right now.
Yeah, it's more than 20 years old. So
yeah, 1 minute. You initially in this game follow a doctor who you think is a person on the ship, and then you learn that doctor is actually Shodan messing with you, and you have to team up with Shodan to kill the CEO of the Von Braun, who is the captain of the Von Braun. So it still kind of has that Heart of Darkness style storyline where you're going for this captain. I forget he's the CEO of Trioptimum, and his name it's just like I don't want to. It sounds like a standard Russian name, but I need to find out what the name of the character is. Actually, I think I have it up here, but I'll look it up later. But yeah, so end of spoilers. But that's the story of it. So that's what they had to change to make their Junction Point into System Shock, is just by throwing in your classic System Shock stuff. So, the project was allotted 1 year to be completed. That's all they had was 1 year. So that's kind of why the staff began working with Looking Glass Studios' unfinished Dark engine, the same engine that was used to create Thief the Dark project. Is they just wanted to skip the entire engine part of the design process and just focus on getting the game built. The designers included role-playing game elements in the game, just like Ultimate Underworld. But the environment in System Shock 2 like consistently changes with the player's presence. So they used a lot of like paper and pencil role-playing games as influences to make those changes work, like just structure-wise is how I would describe it. This is something I kind of didn't really understand, but the character customization system was based on something called the Traveler's methodology. And that's why you have these fictional military branches with multiple character paths. That's kind of makes it so you have more of an open-ended game experience. You're starting off with a branch of 3 that can then branch off into more stuff.
Okay.
Now we're going to talk about the thing that gets you so scared, Tyler, the survival horror aspect of the game.
Oh, no.
Don't get scared, Tyler. Everything's fine. So they did 4 things to make the game super spoopy. First, isolation is super important. What's scarier than being alone? You have no physical contact with other people that are like you, that are not mutants or robots or scary or trying to murder you. Second, there was a vulnerability created. So your character's kind of fragile. There's some story stuff going on there. No spoilers. Last, there were 2 things done. They had the inclusion of moody sound effects. Spooky sound.
Ooh.
Yeah. And they also had spooky lighting. Because you know what? I think the 2 big things you need in any horror is spooky sound and spooky
Lots of
lighting.
blinking lights, right? That blink in a non-predictable fashion. I think that's really important.
Yeah, when I tried to play like Outlast, I just couldn't do it because the spooky blinking lights. I couldn't do it. So this is also the time with the survival horror that they decided to have. I guess I already kind of said it. So spoilers again in my notes. 42 minutes. Spoilers again. This is why they decided to bring Shodan back. Is they wanted to have a moment. And again, the parallels to BioShock 1 are pretty crazy, where you are betrayed by a person that you think is good. And at first you're like betrayed by Shodan, and then you have to team up with Shodan. And they just felt like at the time in 1999, there were not a lot of moments where like players were betrayed by characters in video games. Like you kind of just were either good or bad. And there were good guys and bad guys. And there weren't a lot of like heavy story, like gray area stories going on. And that was a big choice they made for System Shock 2. Several problems they had during the project came up because the team actually had 2 different software companies working on it. As I said, it was made by Irrational Games and also Looking Glass Studios at the time. Notice the name change. So they had a lot of like inexperienced employees and also a lot of like communication problems, but there's actually some people that have said that this was super advantageous to them because their inexperience also bred enthusiasm and commitment that might not have been present with a more jaded set of developers. So if you have like hardened veterans, they would be like, why are we doing it this way? This is dumb. But because they had such new and optimistic people full of hope and love, they were fine with it being completely unorganized and kind of crazy. The Dark engine actually had some serious problems with it. It was unfinished, and a lot of the programmers had to fix software bugs as they encountered them, which took a lot of time.
Ooh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Working closely with the engine code, though, did allow them to add like additional features to the game. So in a way, it was like a hurt and help them situation. They actually had a problem when they showed off the demo build at E3, because the demo build at E3 was being shown right after the Columbine High School incident.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they removed all guns from the presentation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? They just took them all out.
Who requested that? Was that an E3 request or?
I think it was like an internal request. You know, like let's just do this to not upset anyone, which is smart, you know? And it's, the game, the whole point of System Shock is you can do things without guns if you want to. So it's kind of like, it works, you know, the psionic powers and like you got your trusty wrench, you can do anything. So I thought this was kind of odd. So the game comes out on August 11th, 1999. 9 days before this is when the demo comes out. Doesn't that seem really short?
Yeah.
Was this a thing they did?
I guess the demo wasn't like a beta. It was just...
Yeah, the demo for this was a third of the first mission and a tutorial. But that came out in a demo disc on August 2nd, 1999, and then System Shock 2 released on August 11th. So I don't know if this was commonplace at the time, but it just didn't seem like it was like a week until the game came out. So just wanted to throw that in there. But this is kind of where we get to the fun mystery that's still going on today. Much of System Shock's history actually takes place after that launch, because Looking Glass Studios closed in the year 2000. As I said, they didn't sell a lot of copies. It was like around 52,000. It was not great. Right after the release of System Shock 2, they're like, seriously, the CEO brought everyone into their like meeting room and was just like, today's the last day, we're closing. Sorry, which really sucks. Yeah. After they closed, there was an IP battle between EA, who published System Shock 2, and Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is what I'm just saying. That's EA, if you didn't know. And Meadowbrook Insurance Group, who was the parent company of Star Insurance Company, who is the entity that acquired all of the assets from Looking Glass Studios, including the rights to all their games. System Shock, Thief. Yeah. So there was this IP battle that would come up after the fact. And this part is kind of just, I've made it into like a here's what happened list, like just straight up bulleted list of the events that take place after the fact to get System Shock to a point that it's playable. Because for the next like few years after System Shock's release, the game got more and more buggy as technology progressed, but the game was not being supported because Looking Glass Studios closed. So players had to do something. So here we go. In the player community, attempts have been made to update and patch System Shock 2 for known issues on newer operating systems and limitations that have been hard-coded into the game. So this was going on from 2000 to 2009. Then, in 2009, a complete copy of System Shock 2's Dark Engine source code was discovered in the possession of an ex-Looking Glass Studios employee who was at the time just working at Eidos Interactive. They're like, oh, hey, I found this. Here you go. Here's the entire source code for the Dark Engine. Then, in April 2010, a user on the Dreamcast Talk forum disassembled the contents of the Dreamcast development kit he had purchased, and among those contents, he received some of the source code for the Looking Glass games System Shock 2, and like Thief. Like he found source code for those games. I
wonder why those were with a Dreamcast dev kit. Maybe there was at one point like some plans to like make a Dreamcast port or something.
Yeah, apparently. Like that's the only reasoning I can think of.
Wow.
So then, an unknown user, only known as Le Corbeau, which is French for the Raven, issued a patch for System Shock 2 and Thief 2 in 2012. And that patch, which is known as the Dark, like resolved everything. It's called New Dark is the name of the patch. No one knows who Le Corbeau is. They're just a person that took all of the source code for the original. They had to have, that's the one thing that's a big mystery, is how did they get the source? Because they had to have the source code for not only the engine, but for the game to fix all these known issues. And they updated it so well. Like the game works flawlessly. And I read an article from Rock Paper Shotgun about this, and the patch is called New Dark. And it appeared on the French Thief fan forum called Ariane Forever. And it was the work of Le Corbeau, who no one knows who Le Corbeau is. Many people think it might be like an ex-employee because they know so much about this code and they've done so many things to it. But they fully updated the code to modern standards, in releasing System Shock 2, both Thief games, and the editor Drom Ed from the 90s technological prison. They've updated all this old stuff from Looking Glass Studios. They even updated the demos from Looking Glass Studios. Yeah, this person, Le Corbeau, or this team of people, we don't know who it is, heroes. And right when this happened, Stephen Kick, who owns Night Dive Studios in Vancouver, Washington, shout out to Vancouver, was looking to license the System Shock property to create System Shock 3. So he was talking to Star Insurance, who had that company, the company who had the IP rights. And they said they would not let him make System Shock 3, but they would grant him the license to bring System Shock 2 to modern systems. He was trying to figure out how to do this, and then days later, this patch, New Dark, came out, which solved all the problems. So after New Dark, Steve and Kick tried to contact Le Corbeau, did not get any contact to the person, so didn't know, but assumed it's like public use. And Steve and Kick has even said, like, I am not making any money off of this. I am just trying to like get this game in a working state. So they use the New Dark patch, and at the same time, they're trying to move it to the Night Dive Studios engine, which I think is called Kex, Kex. They want to like, they have both options available for you to play this game. And then Stephen Kick talked to goodoldgames.com for a timed exclusive release in February 2013. And the game at this time was the most requested game to be added to the catalog. So naturally, came out. It was called the Collector's Edition. It included the New Dark patch, and that's how you were able to play System Shock 2 after, like, what was it? It came out in 2000, or at the end of 1999. Probably stopped working around 2000, like a year later, because it just got... Mm-hmm. So that would be 12 years of being unable to play this game. Wow. Unless you had your original system set up from when you bought it. Yeah, and that's how they got the game to work again. There's also user mods. Like, there's been a lot of user maps made. Added to the soundtrack. That's all like the mod community. They've added the original pitch document for the game. They found that. The cool thing is, from what it sounds like, old like Looking Glass employees are really down with this, and they're cool, and they're like sharing information, which is nice.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So System Shock 2 was released on June 18th, 2013 through Good Old Games. And then it was available on Steam on May 10th, 2013, and a Linux version on April 2014. Le Corbeau has continued to update the game since 2012, and no one knows who they are.
We still don't know who Le Corbeau is.
No one knows who they are. Yeah. Huh. That Rock Paper Shotgun article I read about Le Corbeau's anonymous like identity was from 2019. Like, it's very recent, and no one knows who Le Corbeau is. I thought that was just kind of cool. So, hey, since then, if you didn't know, Night Dive Studios has acquired the rights to System Shock from the insurance company that had it, and they are actually working on a reboot of the original System Shock. They did a Kickstarter for it that was very successful. So that game, I think if you go on Kickstarter and just type in System Shock Night Dive Studios, or even just System Shock, you can see the page of what they have in mind. They're actually updating it pretty regularly too. So if you're interested in playing System Shock, I would say spend $10 on Steam to play 1 or 2, or just wait for this re-release to come out of System Shock 1. Another studio called Other Side Studios is actually working on System Shock 3 right now, which is pretty cool. Right. So there will be a sequel to System Shock 2, and that's System Shock. I mean, if anything, all this did was show me that the immersive sim genre has a whole new area we can explore with like Thief and Deus Ex and Prey and Dishonored, and there's just so much to do, Tyler.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the BioShock series.
And the BioShock series, which we will be doing soon. I actually thought it was kind of funny because I decided to do System Shock, not realizing that there were these two games this is actually kind of relevant information because this game's coming out. These games are probably going to come out in the next 2 to 3 years, I would say. So, all right. But cool. With that, Tyler, what you been playing?
Well, this week I finally started up Jedi Fallen Order. I'm not sure
Ogobogo or whatever.
Ogobogo, yeah, Ogdo the first boss. I did end up beating him. He's an optional boss that's very difficult if you are not a purveyor of Soulsborne type games, which I think Fallen Order is kind of like a baby's first Dark Souls. I'm not sure how much I like that style of gameplay. I love the storyline. Star Wars is great. The storyline seems really cool. Graphics are awesome. The exploration stuff is really cool. It seems like a very cool game. The combat is very difficult, and I'm not sure how much I dig it. Like, I have to be in the right mindset to play this game because it's so frustrating for me, because I will die on just trash fights over and over and over again. And I feel like I make no progress, and I lose progress because I die so much, and it's getting frustrating. I'm getting a little bit better at it. Slowly but surely, but I have a feeling that as I get further and further into the game, it's going to get more difficult, and I'm going to hit a wall, and I'm going to not want to play it. So I haven't played it in a couple of days, but yeah. So I've been playing that, and of course, World of Warcraft. I played for like 7 hours straight on Thursday, doing all of the bosses of the current raid, Castle Nathria, and I did them all. So I've done the whole raid. It's the first WoW raid I've ever fully completed all the bosses in, which felt pretty great. So other than that, I've been kind of leveling up an alt character and doing mythic dungeons with you and getting you geared up because we need to get you to kill all the bosses too. So yeah, what about you? What have you been playing this week?
Well, we did the WoW dance boss, which is the greatest boss I've ever played.
I like that. That boss is so fun.
Minus our squad of ding-dongs. It was still really fun. Myself included. I'm including myself in acting like a ding-dong list in the raid finder mode. I've been playing BioShock 2 still this week, but I haven't gotten very far in it. School is kind of really ramped up for me, and I can tell it's going to be hard to play games, which is a bummer. But yeah. I am hopefully going to beat BioShock 2 this week is my real hope. I mean, we can see. But yeah, because I do want to do a history on BioShock 1 and 2. I kind of want to split 1 and 2 and Infinite, because Infinite has so much DLC that I feel like I can do a whole episode on Infinite. And that way, if I can't play Infinite right away, I can just do it later on. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably do BioShock 1 and 2, and then also the DLC for BioShock 2 Minerva's Den, which is its own separate story in an individual episode. And also, we've had some really great submission ideas on Discord for episodes, and I have been writing those down, and I really want to do like video. I guess it would be like cultural impact of video games was one thing that was kind of came up, and like it's like is it Polybius, the arcade game that's like the urban legend or whatever? Have you heard of this?
Oh no, I don't know anything about that.
It's an arcade game that like came out in the 80s. A lot of it is a bunch of hooey, but I still think it's like got a cultural impact to it that would be fun to talk about, even if it isn't real. Because you know we talk about video games all the time, and those stories are fictional. So why wouldn't it be fun to talk about another one? Also, I want to talk about Slender Man, because that's like kind of something that came into like the cultural world view, you know, based on a video game. So I think that'd be fun to talk about. So we'll be doing that. We did get a new rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and we are up to now having 101 ratings.
Wow.
Yeah, this is mind-blowing. When we came out, I thought we'd get like 10 ratings, so this is fantastic. All right, this one is on December 16th. It's weird because it came out December 16th, but it just appeared on my phone like 2 days ago. This is called Cobra Chrome. Is the person who made it, and it says, Gangbuster. Normally I don't take the time to rate anything, but these guys are so awesome that I just had to give them 5 stars. Codex History of Video Games is both an easy listen and so informative. Mike and Tyler provide a commentary that is reminiscent of chilling and chatting with friends. I look forward to listening every week and am constantly wanting to join in on the conversations. Keep it up, guys. Thank you, Cobra Chrome. And you can keep up on our conversations if you go on a Discord. That's the best place to do it, I think.
Yep.
But you can always send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us. I'm at Micoletta on Twitter. Tyler is at SneakerElf on Twitter, ELPH. Is there anything else, Tyler? That might be it. I think that's it. Tell your friends about us. I think that's it for
this week. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, say bye to everybody, Tyler.
Goodbye, everybody.